Hey, it feels different, right?
Hello and welcome to episode 9 of Fantasy Sports. Today I'm going to be going over week 1, just recap. I thought that would be the best thing to start off the NFL season after, pretty much talking about, my booms and busts and all that, so on and so forth 2 weeks prior. I was going to show you guys my team, and I do think at one point I'm going to do that probably next week. This week was a very good week. I'll let you guys just in on a little bit about my starting roster. My team is Lamar Jackson, I have Javonte Williams, Khalil Herbert, Tyreek Hill, Chris Olave, Pat Freiermuth, and Calvin Ridley. It's my starting lineup. Clearly this week, definitely Tyreek had a great week. And Calvin Ridley and Chris Olave both look like wide receiver ones on their both respective teams. So I was super excited to see that. But with that being said, I felt like the best way for me to do this would be going game by game. So I'm going to just do exactly that. I'm gonna start on Thursday Night Football. I'm going to head all the way into what just happened on Monday and give you guys a little bit about my thoughts about certain players and certain aspects of the game. First game, obviously, was Lions-Chiefs, week 1, Thursday Night Football. Lions got that win. The best thing I like to see from that was Mahomes still had a pretty decent game without Kelsey, and his wide receivers playing pretty bad. I really liked the way that Jahmyr Gibbs was used in his first game. I know a lot of people were scared that he didn't, actually get a lot of touches, and he didn't do, a great fantasy performance, but obviously the yards per touch, how he was used in the passing game as a decoy, and so on and so forth. I was really excited to see that. Amon-Ra St. Brown and Jared Goff look really good. It looks like that's going to be good for this year. But I was really excited. I forget the tight end's name, but he looked very good as well. He was very good with his hands and yards after catch. I was excited for that. So definitely a lot to take away from that game on the side of the ball when it comes to Jahmyr Gibbs. I don't think David Montgomery is that special. I think Thursday night was the best case scenario for him. He got 21 carries for 70 yards and touchdown, just running down the clock so that Pat Mahomes couldn't get the ball back. And that's best case scenario for him. Next game on Sunday was the Bengals-Browns game. There's not much for me to say about this. I thought Deshaun looked pretty solid. He could have looked better, especially with the way the Bengals are playing. So it wasn't really nerve-wracking for Deshaun, but someone that I am worried about is Amari Cooper. In the games that Amari Cooper has played with Deshaun Watson, he's never looked fully himself. Deshaun doesn't really target him that often, and it seems as though he picks apart the defense on his legs or just throwing short little passes. Nick Chubb looked himself as usual, especially without Kareem Hunt. He definitely got a lot of the ball. He didn't get I think he got less carries than someone else, or maybe he got more touches. I'm not sure, but he definitely had, big runs, a lot of yards. Super impressive game from him. Not too worried about the Bengals side. Week 1, you can't say Joe Burrow, T. Higgins, Jamar pretty much wrapped over after one game. Looking at the Ravens and Texans, having Lamar, this game actually did worry me. You expected, him to go out there and play pretty good. And I know the Texans did a lot this offseason to improve their defense as well as who they signed as their, head coach, who was the former, I'm pretty sure, defensive coordinator for the 49ers, if I'm correct. But with that being said, I still was very upset with what I saw out of both sides. For the Texans, Dameon Pierce doesn't look that strong. I was really excited for him to have a big yard season this year. But it just doesn't look like, C.J. Stroud's the type of guy to give him checkdowns, and or the line doesn't look strong enough for him. But they, all things forgiven, they played the Ravens. But the Ravens, this is what I really want to talk about. Their defense looked really, really well. But Lamar looked like he was making Lamar mistakes as usual. Just classic, turnovers, bad reads, stupid plays, just really ugly. Zay Flowers absolutely dogged it on Sunday. I was super impressed by what I saw. Odell, obviously, I don't think anyone has him up there as someone that, is a big starter, but he had a big catch on Sunday. And even, what's-his-name played pretty good. What's his name? Rashad Bateman, he played pretty well. And, with no Mark Andrews as well and J.K. Dobbins going down, I'm definitely interested to see what goes on for the Ravens in the future. Buccaneers-Vikings, I really liked what I saw out of the Buccaneers offense other than Rachaad White. There's a lot of guys. Actually, this is a very good game to focus on when it comes down to the running backs that I was thinking about talking about. You look at like the Cardinals, the Vikings, the Buccaneers. You look at the Raiders. You look at these teams and they have running backs. Obviously, Josh Jacobs, James Conner, Alexander Madison, and Rachaad White. Very inefficient on carries, but they did get the carries. So I guess my biggest takeaway that I would say for that was it's the question that is, who else is getting those carries? Who else is going to be running the ball? Who else is going to be doing anything? And that is a good question, and it is important. But at the end of the day, I don't think it's important to have a player like Rachaad White starting on your team when he's doing 19 carries for 37 yards. I mean, he barely averaged 2 yards per carry, I think, or maybe it was 39 yards. It was really embarrassing to see. I feel like every time he got the ball, he was slow off the line, just didn't look solid. Same thing for Mattison. He got 11 carries and he didn't look explosive. He's never had a yard. I don't think he's ever had a carry over 20 plus yards, or multiple carries over 20 plus yards in a season. So I didn't like, what I saw from any of those players. But all things considered, Mike Evans played really good. Baker looked pretty solid, so I like the wideouts, and Justin Jefferson played like Justin Jefferson. Kirk, and same thing for their first round pick. Panthers-Falcons. Panthers look a mess. Miles Sanders played solid, but they look terrible. Bijan Robinson, super excited for, very limited touches, but he still played really good. Algier is looking to shape up to be like a flex option with the way they run offense. Drake London and Kyle Pitts, super scared for. I know a lot of people were excited because Desmond Ridder kind of turned it on in the last couple games of the season. But with the way the friggin' coach just plays, it just doesn't seem like they're going to get the value that they're demanding. So I'm definitely worried about that, and I would take a closer eye looking at that forward. Cardinals Commanders. This is a game that I'm also, I think, is worried about. Jahan Dotson, Terry McLaurin, all those guys didn't do very good. It was kind of just a really bad game, and the Commanders didn't look strong coming against arguably the worst team in the league, and even the Cardinals themselves looked really ugly for putting up 16. Marquise Brown looked bad. James Conner looked bad. It just was a bad offensive game for both teams, so it definitely scares me when both of them have some pretty good stars starting for both of them. But with that being said, I think the one thing I could take away from that game is if Kyler Murray is to come back, I'm really high on Marquise Brown and James Conner, because even though they played bad, they played just good enough to make you think about, like, if they had a good quarterback, what they could be doing. Jaguars-Colts. It's a really good game. Really, really good game. I think if Jonathan Taylor gets back in that offense, it'll be super electric. Michael Pittman, I really liked what I saw. Anthony Richardson, I really liked what I saw. I liked what I saw out of Trevor Lawrence, although he kind of struggled on the yards. He played a really solid game. Calvin Ridley looked really good. Zay Jones is clearly one of those targets that, carried from the second half of last year into this year. Christian Kirk, I just think at this point, he's kind of been replaced as that alpha dog on the team, because clearly he's not the wide receiver 2. And he is the wide receiver 3 at this point. So I don't think the value that he holds anymore is that important. I bet, it could just be one game, but the fact that he didn't even play, I think he didn't play 60, I think he missed 35% of snaps of the total snaps on offense. So he only played around 60 to 65 total snaps of the game. And that's very worrying for someone who came off of a huge season last year and was, wide receiver 1 clearly on that team. But I'm very excited for both of those teams and, the offensive power that they have on both of those teams. So definitely keep it. And I would definitely keep an eye on Anthony Richardson heading into the rest of the year. He did really good in his first game. I think he had a pair of touchdowns, and he just looked comfortable. He looked way more comfortable than any of the other rookie quarterbacks. For the 49ers and Steelers, I don't have any takeaways from this game other than McCaffrey's really good. Debo worries me. Seems like, Purdy clearly likes Ayuk on that team. And George Kittle is just past his days of being a tight end, 3 or 2 or 1. But the Steelers don't worry me. I mean, they played the best defense in the league. And, with that being said, I mean, Deontay Johnson and Pat Freiermuth both went down early in the game, or like around half. So I'm not worried about that. It was an ugly game. It's going to happen. As a Steelers fan, it's going to happen. But, that's life. Looking at the Titans-Saints game, another really good game. Titans offense worries me a little with the way that DeAndre Hopkins and Derrick Henry didn't produce much, and the way that Ryan Tannehill looked terrible. He looked so bad. Saints offense I really liked. They only put up 16 points, but, Derek Carr looked good. Chris Olave looked good. Michael Thomas started off good, kind of sat back. Rashid Shaheed looked really good, so I'm really excited for them. For the Raiders-Broncos, that's the game that really worried me. Both these teams looked anemic on offense, given the Broncos have a pretty solid defense, and it seems as though the Raiders have a solid front 7 now. But with that being said, I mean, Josh Jacobs looked terrible. Devontae Adams, I mean, he played against Pat Surtain most of the game, but he was getting strapped. Javonte Williams was solid, but I mean, he had the most targets on the team, but he didn't seem to get much. I mean, he actually had a solid game for, playing 45% of the snaps. But the wide receivers like Cortland Sutton, and I know Jerry Jeudy's out, but like the fact that you're relying on two guys and the fact that one guy couldn't get it done worries me. Russell Wilson didn't make any mistakes, but he also didn't make any big plays. So a lot to be questioned for the Broncos offense. Looking at the Eagles, that's another real. Patriots offense looked pretty solid. I really liked what I saw to Mac Jones and Ramondre Stevenson. But looking at the Eagles, very confusing game. Kenneth Gainwell was really inefficient, but he got a lot of touches. DeAndre Swift didn't do anything. Rashad Penny was a healthy scratch. Hurts looked he looked like pretty good, but like he also like didn't play that well. AJ Brown, decent. Devontae Smith, pretty good. He got tutty, but Dallas Goedert not getting a touch. I don't think he even got a target. Was really insane to me. So just a lot of questions bearing on that Eagles team. I was very, very shocked at what I saw when they didn't come out and dominate, and only won by 5. For the Rams, Seahawks worry me, man. Geno Smith, 1-year thing. Is that how it's going to wind up turning out? I don't know, but I hope that's not how it turns out because I really like Kenneth Walker. Given Kenneth Walker had a lot of carries on Sunday, but he didn't do a lot with them. And that worries me, especially because the Rams are quote-unquote the top or bottom 3 team in the league. So for them to only put up, 1 touchdown worries me. DK Metcalf was getting, just kind of locked up. So definitely really confusing. Dolphins-Chargers game was really impressive. Obviously, the Chargers came out, played pretty solid. I would say the biggest thing I took away from the Chargers team is that Austin Eckler clearly is going to have another big season. Keenan Allen looked really good. Clearly, Justin Herbert's still a favorite target. Mike Williams scares me. Gerald Everett scares me. Quentin Johnson scares me. I don't like the fact that, in a 70-point total game that they pretty much didn't even put up 8 fantasy points. I don't even think they put up 15 combined together. So it definitely worries me and it definitely confuses me because Justin Herbert didn't have a great offensive outputting game. He didn't throw that many yards. He only threw 1 touchdown. It was confusing. On the other side of the ball, I think it's understood that Tyreek is obviously the alpha dog on that team, and that Tua is coming for vengeance this year, and I'm really excited about that. I'm not too worried about Jalen Waddle. I think it just unfortunately Tyreek Hill took over. I mean, for me, fortunately, but for Jalen Waddle owners, unfortunately, Tyreek Hill just wound up taking over the game, and you just kind of got to go with your guy who's just getting open all the time. But I still liked when Jalen Waddle got the ball. He made the most of his touches, so he had a lot of yards after catch. And for the last game, I don't want to. By the way, I'm not going to cover the Bills, Jets, and Cowboys, Giants because those games both, the Cowboys, Giants game, nothing happened in that was good for other than the Cowboys defense. And the Bills, Jets game was kind of like all over the place. Not a lot of offense or not a lot of fantasy offense. There was a lot of defense though. Bears, Packers game, really, 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 really like Jordan Love. That was super impressive. Really great game. I really like Romeo Doubs, even with Christian Watson coming back. Clearly, he likes him in the red zone. Aaron Jones looks like he's in for a big season. And Dylan looks like his value is pretty much diminished at this point. It doesn't seem like he's going to get those goal line touches anymore. Aaron Jones got a couple of them. And it doesn't seem like they want to go on the ground game as much as they did 2 seasons ago. As for the Bears, DJ Moore doesn't really worry me. He was getting shaded by Jair Alexander the whole time. They played a pretty solid defense. I don't like the fact that Justin Fields had 2.6 yards or expected air yards per throw. I don't like the fact that Khalil Herbert got out-touched by the rookie and got a touchdown vultured from him by the rookie, so that scares me. And it also confuses me just because it seems as though Khalil Herbert's putting back in that, secondary role when he shouldn't be. But with that being said, it was a really interesting week of fantasy football. There was a lot to cover and a lot to be, questioned as for certain players. And I'm sure a lot of people are upset about, the injuries and so on, and I am too. I really wanted to see a big season out of Garrett Wilson and Aaron Rodgers. But week 2 is coming around. I think week 2 really shows what you think about week 1. It proves or disproves in week 2. So definitely we'll get into more stuff week 2 and show you guys my team. As always, I appreciate you watching and tune in next week.